Hello, beautifuls. My name is Quavia. I'm the creator of JuJu Thyme. I'm an Afro mystic, a hoodoo, and I channel messages from the Divine Dark Mother and their messengers for our highest and best good towards our long-term goals and healing. Welcome to the Sacred Serpent. Within the Sacred Serpent lies a space to share what I've discovered and learned and what I'm still discovering and learning. In the Sacred Serpent, we explore the principles and concepts of Afro mystic understanding so we can practically apply them to our lives, our magic, and most importantly, our character. Welcome to episode 4 of the Sacred Serpent. I am really excited to do this episode today. There's a lot of information, but I'm here for it, okay? I kept going back and forth, though, on how I wanted to bring together this concept. There are Eshu-Ellegba connections. Yes, Eshu-Ellegba is back in this episode. So if you haven't listened to episode 1, the principle of Eshu-Ellegba, or episode 3, where we discuss another trickster-like character, I would recommend that you give that a listen after this episode. We will also talk about some Ma'at connections, which we haven't spoken about yet, but we saw a little bit of it in, again, episode 3, where another character that was, it was another character in the tale that I spoke of that was a fair and honest judge. The Ma'at principle is another deep, beautiful rabbit hole, but we'll need to keep it on track today because there are also slight, very slight Bible connections and my own personal connections that are quite relevant to this concept. So, what is this concept? What does all of this have in common? A feather. Yes, a feather. So, yeah, in this episode, we are going to discuss the power of the feather. Never in my wildest thoughts did I think I would be able to see a divine connection between Eshu-Ellegba, Ma'at, and the Bible. But like I said, we won't get too much into the Bible aspect. We're just going to touch it very, very lightly for now. But anyway, the feather comes up a lot in various Afro mysticisms. It's always a different specific feather depending on the practice. So we won't get too specific on each different type of feather and the bird it came from, because the birds these feathers come from, they have their own specific meaning that I would love to discuss one day. But for now, we are just looking at the feather in general and the concepts and principles that are connected to it. Let's start with Eshu-Ellegba, because I always start with him first. There is a tale I found in Flash of the Spirit that talks of the crossroad in the history of the Orishas. In this tale, the Orishas wanted to know who among them was supreme under God, of course. So all the Orishas, all 400 plus of them, decided to go to heaven to find out. That is a little too many guests for my blood, but each Orisha decided to bring with them a gift, which honestly does make it a little better. This gift that they brought with them was a sacrificial offering that they placed on his or her or their heads. Everyone did this but Eshu-Ellegba. You see, Eshu-Ellegba decided that he was going to honor the deity of divination with a sacrifice first. So he went to the authority of Ifa or Afa, depending on the practice. Because of this honor, Eshu-Ellegba was told what to bring to heaven. He was told to bring a single crimson parrot feather and to position it upright on his forehead. This was to signify that he was not to carry burdens on his head. The aspect of Eshu not carrying burdens on his head kind of speaks to me of his, let's not say his trickster side. Let's say his carefree, his worry-free nature, his playful nature, but his wise nature. So anyway, so he was told what to bring, right? And he did it. And I can almost see in a very human-like way, even though I know the Orishas are not human in any way, I can just almost see the stares, the anger, like, how can Eshu, disrespect and not bring anything or something like this, the looks of confusion that he would have gotten from the other Orishas. But anyway, he did what he was told. And upon God seeing the bright crimson parrot feather on Eshu-Ellegba's forehead, they recognized it as the very seal of supernatural force and ashe. So God granted Eshu-Ellegba the force to make all things happen and multiply. Being granted the power of the force is what I focused on, which in my learning mind, I saw this as the force that is able to turn the handle on a door. Hell, to maybe even be able to touch the door handle at all, or even to be the door handle itself, to open or close it. Now, I want to mention, just to continue the fight against the demonization of Eshu-Ellegba. And I don't know why I have such strong feelings regarding this or him, because he sure enough does not need my help. But the end of this tale is not finished, and I want to quickly mention it. So once again, Eshu-Ellegba was granted this power. It granted him dominion. He was granted the force to make things happen and to multiply it. Using the door analogy again, I imagine it, this force, being dependent on if he even opened the door at all, or how far he opened the door, or what he even opened the door for. It's a lot. But instead of arrogantly making everyone subservient to him, he decided to instead to do the good and appropriate thing. And he gave a large community feast to share his newfound prestige and to honor God for the priceless gift of Ashe. Though he did warn those that did not recognize his status, and I quote, "He would bend them like a string upon a bow or pound them like a shell." Now, I know that last part can sound pretty harsh, but I mean, I don't blame him, Is it just me? It can't be. So like I said, he don't need my help. But all of this because of a single crimson parrot feather and what that feather represented. We also see how the feather, once again, is connected to a supreme force or understanding of having great power when we look at Ma'at. There's a lot to say in what I realize and experience in regards to the teachings, the principles of Ma'at. And that would need to be a separate video in itself. But to keep it short and on topic, Ma'at is a philosophy, a symbol, and a cosmic energy that is everywhere in the entire universe. She embodies world order, justice, harmony, righteousness, and peace. She is recognized most often by her headdress that has, once again, a single feather upon her head. I love that connection. Once I had made it, so many spiritual shivers, okay? But anyway, the feather is meant to symbolize these qualities that she is. Now, the feather in this instance is most often associated with the ostrich feather. But the most important connection here that we must mention is that it is Ma'at that judges the soul when it arrives in the judgment hall for its new initiation. Death and transformation, I see it as just another initiation. There are tales of Ma'at herself sometimes becoming the scale. And the scale is where the heart is weighed against that same feather upon her head. Now, the heart is said to represent the unconscious mind. I already said what the feather represents, but to wrap it up, the feather overall represents truth, which in this sense, it basically means that the unconscious mind, which does not reside in the mind, but resides in the heart, is weighed against whether or not that soul was honorable, was honest, was fair, and had peace and harmony within it, and whether that soul was authentic in being their unaltered nature of how the divine created them. There's definitely more to the tale. Using their Greek given names, so we are all on the same page for now. We have Anubis watching the scales. We have Thoth, or I think it's pronounced Tot. I'm not sure. But they are recording everything. And if your heart is balanced with the feather, then you'd be in paradise. And if it didn't, don't quote me, definitely look it up. But I believe being eaten by a crocodile and dragged to the underworld would be in store. And I would like to think of the crocodile as a type of serpent. So basically, however the result of the tipping of the scale basically determines the life-death life cycle or the birth-death rebirth cycle of that individual. You see the connection of feathers and birds all throughout Afro mysticism and even in the Bible. A few examples in the Mami Wata Vodou, in Mami's triple-headed aspect. There are a lot of symbols associated with them, but focusing on the feather, there's the importance of the multicolored feathers from the African hen. In the first consecrated, let's say, shrine that hosted Mami, there was said to have been dove feathers, which is why in some places you could possibly still see that. In regard to the Bible, we see Noah having released doves to find land after the Great Flood. And in an alternative Bible understanding, we see the doves as being the black doves, or who we may now call them sibyls, who were the holy African priestesses and priests, healers and oracles of various different Mami orders who were able to find this land, maybe through astral projection or by ritual or trance or communing with Mami themselves. I don't know XYZ, but many Bible verses, I believe Psalm 17, Psalm 91, and Job 39:13, depending on, of course, your Bible version, speaks of being sheltered or finding refuge under pinions, which I learned was the end part of a bird's wing. And we are not even touching the concept of bird wings and the principles associated with those. Oh, that is another rabbit hole. I don't know how I live. We see feathers as playing such a vital part in Afro mysticism, as I said. But okay, not to be rude, This is fun discovering and realizing these connections, but so what? Like, what's the practicality? How can we apply this principle to our lives, our magic, and most importantly, our character? I mean, that's why we're here. That's why a part of us is here listening to this, taking these I don't want to say far out, but these concepts, these principles that sometimes seem so far away, and trying to decipher them, code them to their deeper understandings, their deeper meanings of what they're meant to tell us about, as I said, how to apply it to our life, our magic, and our character. Well, there are people who are gifted feathers from nature or from birds themselves or from other individuals through initiation means. And what a beautiful representation to place on your altar as a symbol of power and ashe, the divine, that divine energy. If you may come across feathers while you're out and about, you can take it as you take, let's say, angel numbers, as just a sign reminding you of its concepts to assist you and remind you to stay in balance. You can take the time to contemplate and learn from a feather or meditate with a feather. You can listen to its lessons and its symbols, in other words, what it's telling you. There are individuals that have a feather tattooed on their skin, like myself, or what a beautiful offering to place at a base of a tree or in nature so that some bird or animal can make a shelter from it or to find refuge in it, I find that to be a very connective and beautiful practice in itself. I think there are many ways you can use the feather in your spiritual practice, and you can determine that by leaning into your spiritual ear of how your spirit feels called to honor feathers, or also looking into your lineage of how your ancestors may have honored or used feathers as another possibility. In regards to our life and our character, well, if you were to look at the principles of Eshu-Ellegba and Ma'at, Eshu-Ellegba's feather can teach us to step into spaces and situations unburdened. Now, we are human. This is not to say to be perfect all the time, but I say be aware. The Google definition of unburden means to relieve something that is causing them anxiety and distress. So be aware of your anxiety, be aware of your distresses, and take action when and if they show up. Whether that's spiritual action or professional action or medical action. Unburden yourself, take care of yourself. Then you'll be able to use your discernment and your intuition clearly. Also to note, this is the state you ideally want to be in as you practice your magic. At least one of the states you could possibly be in to practice your magic, the aspect of being unburdened, aware. Because that sense of clarity and knowing of yourself shows you your own power, your own ashe, the ability to really tap and sense your intuition clearly. If you were, let's say, working with herbs, what better way to be able to feel the divine energy between yourself and that herb? The herb already knows itself. So when you are knowing of yourself, you can see the thread between the two of you and know how to utilize it. Lastly, Eshu-Ellegba's feather also teaches us to stay balanced. He didn't have to throw that feast, but he did. He did the appropriate thing, the honorable thing, and he did the justifiable thing by placing strict boundaries. I mean, he said, recognize his status, or he would bend them like a string upon a bow or pound them like a shell. Once again, if that's not placing some form of boundary, I don't know what is. Regarding Ma'at, her feather can teach us of our heart and our unconscious mind, to be a reminder to care solely of our own judgment of whether we are walking in our truth, if we are living a life of authenticity, of peace, of acting honorably, or are we minding other people's judgment, or walking in malicious chaos, or interacting in ways with people that are unethical. This reminds me of some Bible quote, or maybe it's just what people say in general, but we say it's from the Bible, regarding throwing stones, and if you're without sin or something, you throw it back, or no, you throw it or something, or it's something like that. Maybe Jesus, Joshua, Yeshua, whatever you want to call him, said it, okay? But anyway, her feather teaches us that it's only us, ourselves, that have to face her and be weighed against her feather. So we are not judges or lawyers. We are not there to defend our case or give excuses as to why we just couldn't, especially when you are made aware, but you constantly made opposite choices anyway. Her feather teaches us not to judge others. Using the examples of the isms and phobias that people are not tolerating, these would be an example of facing the unjustifiable harm towards the divine nature in other beings. Her feather tells us to face what lies in our hearts, because you'll eventually have to face it anyway. So for those that constantly say they don't want to come back to Earth is trash, why did I come here anyway, XYZ, other than being called here for a purpose of being of service or to spread love and joy, etc. Just maybe, cover all your grounds so that you don't end up back here, whether you're a believer of reincarnation or not. Just cover your grounds. I think a part of this purpose is to begin looking at your heart and seeing what's there that is heavier than that feather. This may be a good place to start. Not an easy place, but a necessary one. Just to cover your grounds, just to cover your grounds for those of you that are dead set that you are not coming back, okay? This is just some advice, okay? So live a life where we do right towards ourselves and towards others. Now, to be honest, I'm not one to usually ever say that, humans are horrible and Earth is trash and all that stuff. I'm not going to speak, no. The Earth, she is doing her thing, trying her best. So I'm not one to speak on that energy like that. But I am definitely in the group that will like to say that this is their last trip. Okay. So I am doing the work with you. I am here with you in looking at my own heart, and seeing the aspects of it that is heavier than that feather, and addressing it now so that I don't have to ideally address it again once I'm at those scales and having to, and seeing my life, flash before me, as, some people say. Leaning into your spiritual ear or your own heart and your intuition. What does the feather concept mean to you? How has it shown up for you? Despite getting as deep as we did, I feel we barely scratched the surface of it at all. There's still so much to discover and learn regarding the concept of the feather, the different birds, the uses, symbols, the tales, etc. And then there's the principle of Eshu-Ellegba. Again, for example, why was it such an honorable thing that he went to and paid respects to the deity of divination first, instead of giving some sacrifice to God first? Was honoring and respecting this liminal space what granted him the home of occupying a part of this space? In a human practical sense, is honoring and respecting this liminal space that important? I mean, naturally, I say yes, but I want to dig deeper into it if I'm allowed. And what's with Ma'at? Where do we even start? That's another principle that we must dig into as much as we are allowed. There are a lot of concepts attached to this principle that can truly aid and balance us. I see it as a very specific type of love. In trying to explain what I mean by that quickly, I'm reminded of some quote that I saw on Instagram. I can't for the life of me remember who said it. I even tried to I thought I saved it, and I tried to go back and find it so I can give proper sightings to this individual. So if you happen to know who said this thing I'm about to say, then please, by all means, let me know so I can make a note of it in the description box. But basically, it went something like, the one who holds you accountable and doesn't want to see you in the same place loves you more than the individual who is satisfied with seeing you go nowhere or seeing you stay the same. It was something like this. I don't know, but this is the type of love I see coming from Ma'at. It's the type of love that I feel. There are a lot more tales with vital concepts to discover and just more to discover with various principles, as I've just discussed, and my arms are open in what I'll be allowed to understand when it comes to these principles and concepts, or any other concepts and principles I share with you. For just like you, I am but standing in front of the ocean and the cosmos in complete admiration of how much I don't know. So I'm excited that I get to be a student of myself and the world so I can continue to explore what else unfolds. As I said, there is so much more to explore, and I am so ready for those doors to open so I can continue to sink my teeth into it. But until then, thank you, beautifuls, for being here with me until the next one. And now I hope you have a better understanding of why I always say truth and love.